Hi, everybody, and welcome to another episode of Simple Living High Thinking, where we unpack Tukaram Prabhu's Friday night Bhagavad Gita class. I'm joined by Tadeu Souza. Hi, Tadeu.
Hello, Kim.
And I'm Kim Pullender, and we are wrapping up chapter 9 today, the famous last verse of chapter 9. What context would you like to give, Tadeu, for today's episode?
Yes, the last verse of chapter 9 and precisely the middle point of the Bhagavad Gita. And again, the only verse that is spoken twice. Uh, Krishna, as the ultimate teacher, would not be redundant. And so, if he's making the same point twice, it means that it is very important. And we should take like such because it's truly revealing a big part of himself or his what would it be like to be a true bhakti yogi, like what is like a true peek, small peek into the consciousness of a advanced bhakti yogi. And so the text itself reads, engage your mind always in thinking of me, become my devotee, offer obeisances to me and worship me. Being completely absorbed in me, surely you will come to me. And so it's recommendation, let's say a strong recommendation by Krishna about something that seems very difficult to obtain, and at least for me, to always engage your mind into anything seems to be a difficult endeavor because the very nature of our mind is to be so flickering and so distracted. And to fix your mind always in one thing, one point, in itself, a difficult thing to accomplish. But then now that object becomes Krishna. So there's much more hope because it's unlimitedly attractive, right? So if we come to that realization, then we are able to ink our mind always into Krishna. And also, such an important verse because it reveals a standard. Krishna is describing not only what he's recommending to Arjuna, but what is it like for all the other pure liberated souls. It is a true insights here. These liberated pure souls are always thinking of Krishna and are Krishna's devotees and offer obeisances unto Krishna. So Krishna is painting a picture to us that what is it like to be in that consciousness? How would we be acting? This is what would it be like? And we would be completely absorbed in Krishna. From us in material existence, then we will come to Krishna, but also for those that are already there with Krishna, this is how they are acting. This is what their lifestyle look like. And so it's also very important from that perspective because it gives us a it gives us insight. What is it like to be an advanced bhakti yogi? What are your thoughts on that, Kim?
Yeah, thank you. That was such a nice intro. I I like this verse. What you pointed out about the what it's like to be an advanced bhakti yogi, and can be a little intimidating. Like the always part of the verse kind of stands out to me. Like, oh, I'm not near that level, and but also what stands out to me is the simplicity of it, where we've kind of talked in past episodes of Krishna pointing out, like, hey, you don't have to do this elaborate big yagya, like, just think of me, offer a flower or leave for water to me. And so this, I think, kind of hits that point home. And I liked what you pointed out about Krishna's not redundant. So the fact that he said this twice in the Gita um, makes me really pay attention to it.
Right. I'm so excited for this episode. We are actually covering two episodes, and this is the end of chapter 9. And then beginning of chapter 10, we will start soon. And we are covering them both. And I'm super excited because there's so many interesting points that came up in class that I'm curious to hear your realizations on those points as well. And so super excited to discuss them. And 934, the last text of chapter 9, sets up a very interesting point of chapter 10, beginning of chapter 10, in a very interesting way and completely related to what you just talked about, Kim, in terms of always thinking of Krishna. And I made another point, I want to highlight it again, that in material, a material endeavor to fix your mind always in something will be difficult because our mind is so flickering. But if we are endeavoring to fix our mind in Krishna, we can say this is a spiritual endeavor. And the good news of that approach, which should give us more hope that, oh, it's not such a hopeless task as you would be to engage your mind always in something material. Something that should give us a lot of hope is that Krishna is unlimitedly attractive. And so, whereas in material experience, we get very attracted by something, and that very something loses its taste in a short period of time, which can be quite frustrating. You know, you can work so hard for something and attain that something, and after one day, 1 week, 1 month, perhaps a year, but nevertheless, in a year's time, that something will lose its taste, one way or another, maybe completely or partially, which yet brings you back to a state of being in, not content, agitated, wanting something else, again, trying to fulfill your desires. So that can be agitating in itself. But contrary to that, Krishna is unlimitedly attractive, which means his attractiveness, all his qualities are unlimited. And so that one point is actually sufficient to cause our minds to always be absorbed or fixed upon himself and never need anything else, because there is an unlimited potential for you to continuously be fixed on that alone. And so that should gives us hope that yes, for a spiritual endeavor, especially if the object of fixation is Krishna, there's good hope.
Yeah, what a nice point. That does actually give me a lot of comfort and optimism, I guess. It's a good point about how everything is so fleeting in this world, you know, even the love that we have with people and our spouses, a lot of times it withers away or isn't just ultimately fulfilling. All the billionaires of the world who have so much money, but yet they're still unfulfilled.
Also, you see that in university students, you can go to college for 4 years convinced that your life's destiny is to change the world in this particular way, and therefore you start studying that subject matter in college to better prepare you for that magnanimous future. And then 5 years later realize, oh, actually I wasn't into it that much, and this past 4 years of my life was not only a waste of money, but even more precious than that, time. And so things lose their taste. You change your mind, and then you're in the search, hankering for something else. It's an uncomfortable position here in this material existence, which Krishna says burns like fire, which is never satisfied and which burns like fire. So, moving on to chapter 10, which starts by saying, the Supreme Personality of Godhead said, "Listen again, O mighty armed Arjuna, because you are my dear friend. For your benefit, I shall speak to you further, giving you knowledge that is better than what I have already explained." And so Krishna again here is revealing part of himself in the sense that he's giving us an insight of how he is, how he acts. And part of one of the teachers this past Friday, Tukaram, had one of his friends join him for class, and he made this very nice point that Krishna here is taking a moment and offering insight into his mindset, like how he acts, and that is a privilege because Krishna is giving us very private information about himself, and that to know somebody deeply, privately, is actually a privilege. So there's a very interesting point he made, because very barely ever, especially in this day and time where the point we were discussing earlier, people are so occupied with so many things, trying to fulfill so many desires, you have the opportunity to connect with something at a deep level and truly know that person and truly experience a deep friendship with a person. And so to know somebody deeply, privately, is actually a privilege. Very interesting point. And here we are being given the privilege to know Krishna, the supreme person. And therefore we should feel gratitude in one sense that, such a text exists, and realized teachers to give us this, to bring up these realizations in these books, and so here Krishna is saying, you are my dear friend, and now for your benefit I shall speak farther. That is such a reciprocation, is so important, and it is so captured here, because in a relationship, nevertheless, it takes effort. Maybe your friend, even in a marriage, let's say you have a romantic relationship with a person, it's not always just good. You have to work to keep it good and to make it good and meaningful. And being able to reciprocate in any relationship at any level is so important, so that it can continue and it is sustainable and it can evolve and is not stagnating. And so you can see that captured so nicely in here. So first of all, because you are my dear friend, so Krishna feels about Arjuna that Arjuna is Krishna's dear friend. So Arjuna must be doing something to have Krishna feel that way towards him. Like, you are my dear friend. Krishna is showing that kind of feeling for Arjuna. And then now, so because of that, then I'm going to do something for you now. I'm going to speak farther for your benefit. And I'm going to give you knowledge that is even better than what I already explained. And interesting enough, this chapter is entitled the opulence of the absolute. So absolute here is Krishna and Krishna's opulence. And so Krishna is now going to give in something better than what he has already explained. It's interesting, right? Because we're discussing, hey, 934 is the ultimate text, is the all-powerful text that is spoken twice, and we glorified that text in so many ways. But then now Krishna is saying, I'm going to give you something that is even better. Well, what is that? Well, it's himself. He's going to be talking about himself here, the opulence of the absolute. And so Krishna is giving to Arjuna in a reciprocal manner himself. So like, what is the highest, is there any highest object, right? And like, we'll be giving the highest value here. And Krishna is reciprocating with Arjuna in that way. And so it shows, it is a privilege for us to know that the Supreme Person is a person that reciprocates and is an expert in maintaining loving relationships. This is what's in it for us. What are your thoughts, Kim?
Yeah, I really like how you pointed out and emphasized the intimacy and the privilege of it, because how do you know God? It's so intimidating. How do you even begin to? And the fact that Krishna wants to, with his languaging, just he wants to be intimately involved with Arjuna, give him secrets that no one else knows. And I like how he's pointing out how to be dear to Krishna. Like when we're in a relationship, oh, what does the other person like to eat, or where do they like to go? We like to please them. And so Krishna is really laying out how anyone can be dear to him. And also just, I don't know, that it's possible, and giving everyone that opportunity is really special.
Yeah, it's a very interesting point. Yep. And one direction that the class evolved was to touch on something that we, I mean, we do in various times, but we did it here particularly, probably a big reason why is because it's the first text of the chapter, and the chapter is called The Opulence of the Absolute. And so it begs the question, what are the opulences? And Krishna, like I was describing earlier, has unlimited opulences and unlimited qualities. Um, that's a part of being God. He's unlimited. He's, eternal, ever evolving, and his qualities are unlimited. And so there are, however, some prominent opulences that Krishna has, and we discussed them and we named them. A few of them are strength, and so Krishna is the strongest, has the most strength, right? In not only what we could call physical, like in the Srimad Bhagavatam, there is a pastime where Krishna, with his left pinky, it's like not only is the left hand, which is not as strong as your right hand, but it's also the pinky, which is the weakest finger you have. So Krishna chooses that, right? With his left pinky, he lifts up the entire Govardhan hill, which is like a mountain, and holds it for 7 days and 7 nights straight without taking a break. And like, that's kind of strength. And that's nothing, that's just him playing around. So not only that strength that would be required to lift a mountain like that, right? But strength of character also. And so strength and fame. So we can think about these things as being potencies or energies, right? That we would like to have. We would like to be strong, have strength in these capacities, and to have fame so that people know who we are because we did something phenomenal. Who wouldn't like that, right? And so there are just different opulences. One of Krishna's opulences that are prominent is it's known as renunciation, which is a little bit tricky because we can think of wealth, which is another of the opulence, right? Wealth, strength, fame, beauty. These are intelligence, wisdom. So these are the prominent opulences of Krishna. When you hear these, it's like, yeah, sign me up. I want that. What is it that I must do? Do I have to go to university and get a degree to give my intelligence? Do I have to get plastic surgery and become really beautiful? Do I have to, you name it, win a glorious war and become famous, or invent the next big thing and become famous? So whatever it is, we want it. These more apparent opulences. But what do we do with renunciation? Like, what does that even mean? And it doesn't seem to have the same bubbly feeling when you hear it. Like, oh, do you want all riches? It's like, yeah, I want to be rich. Wisdom, yes, I want to be wise. But renunciation, my first reaction is not like, yes, I want to be renounced. It's like, no, I want more. Our society is telling us we should be passionate about the things we do and how we do them. And renounced seems to be the exact opposite. Like, I'm not so passionate about it, I'm actually renounced. And so what do we do with that, right? So it begs the question. And the answer was very interesting, is that suppose you are just finished eating a wonderful feast of your favorite food, and everything was done so nicely, it looked good, it tasted good, and let's say it hit the spot. And then now you are in that state. It's like those very few moments right after you're done eating that wonderful feast, and then somebody comes and I'm going to say this in the yogic lifestyle to make more sense. Somebody comes and offers you like a hamburger, and say, hey, would you like to eat this Big Mac from McDonald's, right? Your response to it, your reaction to it is inevitably going to be that, no, I'm okay. I'm satisfied. I am renounced from the desire to have this Big Mac. And why is that? Well, first of all, my belly is full. I'm not hungry. And second of all, not only my belly is full, but it's full of something truly wonderful, prepared very nicely, vegan, vegetarian, organic, prasad, which is to say, it was offered to God in love, first of all, and then God accepts it, and it becomes His mercy to allow us to read the remnants. And you had that meal amongst like-minded spiritualists and having wonderful spiritual discussions and so on. So that kind of scenario. Somebody, some random person walks in and offers you like a old looking Big Mac in a McDonald's bag. Your reaction is that you truly renounced from that possibility. You don't want it. You're satisfied with something that is much, much higher. And therefore, you're not going to be hankering after this less than ideal types of food. And that is what we mean by renunciation. And the reason why I think it's so important to highlight this is because it can be very deceiving. First of all, we don't know exactly what to do with it. I didn't, anyways. Like, how is renunciation something desirable? And second of all, when we see a true spiritualist, somebody who's really advanced in spirituality, yogic path, you're going to notice that in their behavior. And that can be alarming. It can be perceived as, lack of passion or disinterest. I had this experience with my guru once. I was fortunate to be able to drive him. And once we got to the beautiful Laguna Beach, we sat in front of the temple on the little tables that we have there. And it's Southern California, Laguna Beach. This was a between spring, like the end of spring, beginning of summertime. So it's not too hot, it's not cold. The flowers are still beautiful and green and smelling good, and the birds are flying in the air. It's a pure blue sky, pure sunshine in Southern California, and the ocean is over there. And I'm super ecstatic. I get to drive my guru, and this weather is so beautiful, and it's Sunday. All my people that I love are all here, so it's great. But then he sits with his back towards the ocean, and I thought, wow, in my ignorance, I'm like using all my courage to expose the ignorant person in me, judging my guru, having the audacity to judge my guru, and ask myself, well, why can he appreciate that? It's just like me. I'm so intrigued by the ocean, and I'm looking at it in awe. So should he, and appreciate the beauty. Why isn't he? That was obviously, I never had the courage to ask him, but it was in my mind. So a few years later now, perhaps this is a realization of what happened there. This is somebody who is not intrigued by the art, but in love with the artist. The art is the sunset, but the artist is Krishna, he who created the sunset. And if you are in love with the artist, you can certainly appreciate the art, but your feelings of love for the artist by far surpasses your attraction to the art, even though the art is there and it is beautiful and it should be appreciated in relationship to the artist. And especially if you are in love with the artist, that is much higher, and it will cause you to be from anything else because you are experiencing within yourself something that is much higher, and your behavior in the world, in the material world, towards material things will be renounced as well. And so this is something to keep in mind when you see an exalted spiritualist walking around. What's going on internally for them is much, much higher. And therefore, they have this renounced attitude towards the exterior material world.
Hmm. Yeah, those are such nice examples, especially with your guru. Thanks for sharing that. I like that. Like, why? Hey, why aren't you looking at the sunset? Yeah.
Like, don't you see my example? Look at me. I'm appreciating nature, you know?
Yeah. Yeah, this idea of renunciation, I too was perplexed, like, oh yeah, what is renunciation doing in this list of the opulences? And the idea that you can't give up something unless you have something better. And I see that all the time with, addicts. They're not going to give up something until there's a better alternative. Maybe it's, the better alternative is not lying in the street, passed out, but or even in bad relationships. You can't get over, some people can't get over a bad ex unless, someone new comes in. So the idea that renunciation is not, oh, I'm punishing myself, I'm just going to restrict myself, blah, 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 but that it's actually, they're really happy and ecstatic because they found something so much better. And the idea that, well, God has everything. What is God moved by? What is special to God? And the answer being, what do you give someone who has everything? And you give them love. And so, I'm not there, that advanced bhakta stage that we all strive for. I'm clearly not close to being there, but the idea, whenever Tukaram Prabhu teaches classes on that topic about this love of Krishna that just consumes you, and then nothing else in the world bothers you or distracts you, like betrayal or sadness or whatnot, like you're just consumed with Krishna, and it's like the ultimate answer to everything, the ultimate satisfaction to everything. Um, that really intrigues me, being in that state.
It's a wonderful point. The Like I mentioned, right? The Krishna has unlimited um, qualities. If we think about our relationships in the world, and the people to whom we have affection, there's always that quality of that person that attracts us, that makes us want to be in that person's presence again. Whether it is to have dinner or lunch, or watch a movie, or whatever, that you want to hang out, you want to be close, because there's something about that person that attracts you. And it is oftentimes, well, I would argue that it's all the time, their qualities, that's what attracts you to them. And Krishna being unlimited in his qualities, there's an unlimited object for us to love, and to realize or accept. I think both of them. I think you can realize and not accept. I guess no. If you truly realize it, you must accept. But to really really consider that is the fact, that Krishna is a supreme person with unlimited qualities, and that would be enough to keep us truly satisfied and not have to hanker after anything else, and and therefore be renounced of anything that is lower. It's a big part of, especially for our path, our spiritual path, that something, that Krishna, that potential for love is always there. uh, you know from from the very broad bucket of Eastern spirituality, there's also another path, right? We don't talk about it as much, but we refer to them as the Mayavadis, or the impersonal philosophers, that will argue that in your perfect existence, like when you achieve perfection in your path, that you lose your individuality and you become one with the whole, and that you are that whole, you just temporarily in illusion, having an appearance of being separate, but in your perfect state, you lose that appearance of being separate, and you again regain your constitutional position as the absolute whole, or God. So then, the good news here is that, hey, you're God. And yeah, it's pretty cool, right? If you want to be the president of the United States, that would be cool. What to speak of being God? So then you are God, I'm God, you're God. We're in illusion, perceiving each other as separate. And then when we become perfect, we shed the veils of individuality and we all become one. But then there isn't me and Krishna existing separately from each other, and therefore being able to love each other. And so you lose that part. So contrary to that, which would be boring, right? I don't want to be in eternity by myself.
Yeah,
It's just
for
me
sure.
there. Like even we even have material experiences of that examples. The top people we know, like Michael Jackson, Whitney Houston, people that committed suicide due to their fames themselves reported and gave their testimonial that they felt so lonely. They couldn't trust anybody. Are you interested in a friendship with me because of me or because of my fame and my money? Like, I don't know. I don't trust you. And it seems as if you are interested in my money and my fame, not me. So it's a lonely position to be in that drives you into deep depression and suicidal. And so that would be so boring to be God, so much more opulent, so much more famous than these names I just mentioned, and be by yourself for eternity, which is a much longer time than these people lived. So you're going to eternally be that unlimited God by yourself, and that is the spiritual perfection you're proposing. Well, it doesn't seem to be logical or desirable, and so far, and therefore, our particular spiritual path where Krishna is always there existing and we always exist as his beloved loving servants, and that would be enough because he's unlimitedly beautiful and has unlimited qualities, and that can truly and eternally keeps us engaged and always experiencing more. And when reaching that level, it is only natural that anything that is last, our quality, our opulence, would be that we are renounced towards that thing, which is less.
Yeah. Yeah, beautifully said.
All right. So, Kim, would you like to read the next verse?
Okay, so text 2. Neither the hosts of demigods nor the great sages know my origin or opulences, for in every respect I am the source of the demigods and sages.
Yeah. What do you think?
Well, when I first read it, I was thinking that he's calling out the demigods and sages because everybody reveres them, respects them, worships them, and Krishna's calling them out, like to call attention to the fact that, hey, that's not really the ultimate goal, the ultimate source, and that actually, oh, I'm the one who's behind them, I am the source of them. So thought it was a really powerful point.
Yes, I agree. And then also, uh, Krishna as the ultimate, the supreme person, he knows how to do everything in a perfect way. And so we can also think of Krishna as the perfect marketing agent and salesman, right? And so when he's trying to gives us something, he's going to perform a marketing effort and a sales effort that you could expect to be expert. And there is also that going on here, because when we think about the demigods and the sages, it's like, wow, even for Arjuna, as high as he is and was at that point, a demigod would structurally be somebody even above him. And so you would look up to a demigod and a sage. But then if somebody comes to me and says, hey, you know what? Even the person that you look up to does not know what I'm about to tell you. It's
Mm.
like, oh, then what is that? Right? Like that was me to be super interested. It's like, wow, even the people that I honor and admire, even they don't know this secret, this knowledge that you're about to give me. Well, now I'm like, I perceive that knowledge now. Whatever it is that you're about to tell me, I now, even before you told me, my level of interest in this and curiosity has increased because you're hyping it up, you know. So I think there's also that going on here.
Yeah, I like that point.
And so the next text is, he who knows me as the unborn, as the beginningless, as the supreme Lord of all the worlds, he only, undiluted among men, is free from all sins. When I first hear this text, it's probably not as a parent, but I come to this idea that to know him is to love him, right? I think it's not so apparent because we're talking about love, which is more of a positive emotion, in contrast to sin, which is like a negative feeling I get when I think about being a sinner. And so that's why I'm saying it may not be as a parent, but Krishna says, he who knows me, and then now he's further explaining what would that look like, right? Well, if you know me, you know that I am unborn. If you know me, you know me that I am beginningless. If you know me, you know that I am the supreme Lord of all the worlds. And and then you know me, right? Those are three different ways that if you have realized, if you know that of me, those are three different ways in which you could say you know me. And again, to know him is to love him, right? We have this idea in Christianity as well. I think many different school of thoughts postulates this truth that to know God is to love God. But then why is it that I have this relationship, this why I connect these two things together is because, well, if I know God and I love God, then my actions will reflect that, my actions in the world, and they are not going to be sinful. I am going to be free from sins because all the actions I engage in, my motivation for engaging in those actions are godly. They are noble. They are directed at God, and therefore they cannot be wrong. They can only be righteous. Uh, in every moment, like across time, like absolutely right? Not just relative, something that is right today but wrong tomorrow. No, I am actually free of sins because I'm in love with God and I am acting based on his pleasure.
Oh, okay. That's a really great point. So you're saying that the freed from all sins is a result of your devotion to Krishna. Oh, that's such a
Yeah,
nice point because yeah, like you said, originally sins brings up like so many connotations and oh, we need God to just like forgive us, tap us on the head and but this idea that
exactly.
oh, freed from all sins, just it's just a natural reaction. It's not something you need to like focus on, but if you focus on your relationship with God, then it's just a result.
It's like a wonderful byproduct, like a
Hmm.
consequence, an effect of knowing God. You know God. If you know him, you love him. If you love him, then what the way you're thinking, the way you're acting, they are naturally non-sinful. Your thoughts are not a sinful thought. Your actions, they're not a sinful action because they're going to be for God's pleasure. That's how you're going to act. That's what we mean by devotional service. And therefore, you're free of sins, which also carries another implication, which is to say that if you don't know God like this and much more, and therefore in love with God and acting for God, you are going to be a sinful person. There are different levels of this so-called sin. Obviously, we can think about the worst possibilities and we can think about um, which is a very interesting point that came up in class also. No, actually, I'm mixing up right now. I was listening to my guru this morning also, and he was talking about a list of desires that we may have, which are for ourselves and not for the purpose of pleasing Krishna's senses. So for Krishna's sense gratification, that is called um, prema, love, pure love. And desires for satisfying ourselves is called kama, which is lust. So the difference between love and lust. And there is a very elaborate list of desires that one may engage in that is ultimately meant to fulfill one's own desire and therefore considered to be lust, kama. And the reason I'm bringing this up is because it's so subtle, it's very tricky. Things such as patriotism, nationalism. So you become a soldier and you go to the army, our society will honor you. What is that desire? According to our scriptures, that's also a selfish desire. It's a desire for you to be recognized. And so even these subtleties, these ways in which one may act in the world that are not so gross, such as rape and murder, that will definitely be sinful. Others that are more difficult to even recognize, which the higher your consciousness grows, then the more preoccupied with these more subtleties you become. But then they're very subtle, like family life. You know, for you to be I'm going to speak giving my current experience, a father, a husband, you know, a provider. These are noble things. You would not consider these things to be sinful. Like if I say, I am going to work hard, I'm going to get a righteous job and I'm going to work hard, and with the money that I earn, I am going to provide an education for my children so that they become exemplary models for society and educate them properly, and I will be a faithful husband to my wife. Who would tell me that I'm being a sinner? In fact, we even lacking that in our society today. Most people don't even have that. And I'm not saying I have. I'm saying, you know, these are the things that I aspire to. But who would label such a person a sinner? Nobody. Those are honorable things. But according to our scriptures, is a very subtle selfish desire, the desire to be recognized as a great father, as a great husband, as a great employee or employer. That is nevertheless a selfish desire. And therefore, our scriptures will say that is kama, lust, various different levels of lust. And you could say that that's a sinful act, not sinful in the way that is so negative that you're going to have to be punished for and sent to hell for. But you have to gain, you're going to be forced to accept another material body, even if it is to reap the benefits of such good selfish desires. But you're going to be forced to accept another material body, which for a spiritualist, that is hell. We don't want to be here. We want to be there. And therefore, you can say that's one's very subtle, like a very positive type of sinful activities, because let me try to be clever here. It will cause suffering to your own self. You're going to accept another material body. And when I say you, I mean the soul, right? So you're going to be causing sufferings, because that's what birth means. Even if it's mixed with temporarily material pleasures, there's going to be suffering as well. And so you're going to be causing suffering to your future self, to your future incarnation. And therefore, that could be looked upon as a very subtle sinful act. So what are your thoughts on that, Kim?
Yeah, I've always been curious. I like how you pointed out just the subtle nature, how because it is very subtle by society standards, those would be very noble goals. And I've always been curious about the idea that Krishna gives us ultimately what we want, whether it's worship of demigods or we want to be in this material relationship or this career, and just how that works in general when you're talking about something like this, where, well, I want to love Krishna, but I also want to aspire towards this family. I really want this career. I just, and how that all balances out, you know, how that ends up turning out in our lives.
It's very interesting you mentioned that, because like I said, I was listening to my guru giving a lecture on these topics, and I think he foresaw the point you're making, and he spoke further to it, which is to say that that's why duties exist. Dharma, like, dharma in the sense of your duties, spiritual duties, religious duties, let's say, in the material world. That's why duties exist, and that is what we mean by karma yoga, actually. That because one may not be in a state of consciousness, let's say, or spiritual development stage, where you can truly engage in prema, which is fulfilling Krishna's sense gratification. If you are not able to do that 100% of the time, which is the ultimate goal, then you are inevitably going to have to do things that satisfies your sense gratification. And therefore you do it in a regulated way, in a way that is, the very subtlety of what we're discussing here, in a way that is good. If you speak about human civilization, and therefore you do your duty, properly. But then you have this idea that you're acting out your duty, and the fruits of your duty you give up for Krishna. So now you get to do your duty, which is not something that is directly meant to give Krishna's sense gratification, give sense gratification to Krishna. You're still doing something that makes you feel like you're a good father, let's say, but you're giving up some of the results of that action for the purpose of Krishna or Krishna consciousness. That we call that karma yoga. So then duties exist. So then we are nevertheless here fulfilling our selfish desires, you know. But then, yeah, we can evolve to a point where truly our own only motivation is Krishna's sense gratification. And we call that prema, bhakti, love, pure love. And so, yeah, I don't know. I think I may have taken a tangent here. I don't know exactly if I was
No,
still
that
speaking on the
actually,
point you actually made.
that was a really good point. That hit home for me. The idea of giving up the results of your actions, and so still doing what you are drawn to in this particular lifetime with wherever you happen to be in your spiritual advancement, and still being able to do that, but then giving up the results to Krishna. So, for example, I am furthering my counseling career, and it's taken a lot of time, and I get frustrated at times when I don't have time to listen to as many lectures as I want to, um, and listen to as many classes and read as much as I want to of the Bhagavad. Like, I'm still now just in the third canto when I could be in the seventh or eighth canto by now. And so this balance of my time and how to allot that time, I struggle with that. But what you just said makes a lot of sense. And for me to come more into acceptance of where I am versus where I think I should be or where I want to be, but just more of, this is who I am. my my counseling career is, my education, my master's degree is important to me. And yeah, I'm just not an advanced sannyas where I'm, renouncing everything and just devoting 100% of my time to Krishna. That's just not where I am at this point in my life. So I do like your resolution.
Wonderful. I have a follow-up, which I've heard in the same lecture that I've been discussing here from my guru, that karma yoga, however, is not to be looked upon as something of less, but just less, right? For example, something inferior than bhakti yoga And that's just what that is, something inferior in Bhakti Yoga, and is always going to be inferior. And that's where I am, because I'm not as evolved yet to be a true Bhakti yogi. Then, I'm going to settle for less, which is being a karma yogi. And that is less than Bhakti. To not only look at it that way, because that would be misleading. The point that he's making is that, in fact, we don't even see that in the world today. That's how degraded Kali Yuga is. The standards of karma yoga are practically non-existing in our day and age. That would be many, many, many steps ahead for our society if everybody acted within those standards. So we don't even have that in Kali Yuga anymore. So this is the vast majority of us. The way he says is that 99.9% of all people on the planet today must look up to karma yoga and aspire to even get there, because they're not there, and so that not to just think, oh, it's less than bhakti, and I'm inferior because I'm not as evolved yet, so then I'm going to settle for less, and this is where I am, and I accept that. It is true in one sense, but is also something that is so high that most people in Kali Yuga don't even have. And then we're looking up to, we are aspiring to arise to that platform. But then the other point that not only my guru was making, but Krishna himself makes in Bhagavad Gita, is that karma yoga is by itself sufficient for you to achieve perfection. And he even mentions King Janaka as an example of a person who followed karma yoga precisely, perfectly, and attained perfection, which is to say, he arrived at the same destination that a bhakti yogi arrives. And so it is a process which by itself is complete and sufficient to give us the highest perfection. Krishna himself says that, King Janaka attained perfection by doing this. And so, but yes, bhakti yoga, hierarchically speaking, would be superior because you are directly doing now what you're going to be doing eternally. So karma yoga, it's like temporarily, like it's the means by which you can achieve the end. But then when you get to the end, you let go of the means, whereas bhakti yoga is the means and the end. So it puts you in that stage already right now. And you don't ever stop, you just continue to do that. Whereas karma yoga takes you there, but then you evolve into being able to only be preoccupied with Krishna's sense gratification, which is true
Oh,
bhakti, prema.
okay. Wow, thank you for sharing that. I've never heard that teaching before. So, yeah. Can you send me the link to that? Is his lecture online?
Yes. Well,
Okay.
I'm not sure if this particular one may not be, but I can send
Oh,
it to
okay.
you personally.
Yeah, I'd like to post it in the details for the
Oh, yes,
podcast as
absolutely.
well.
I'll give it to you so you can make a link to it. Yes. In fact,
Yeah.
it's a treasure. It's a seminar. It's
Mm.
1 out of 3. So this is in lecture one. So there's like 3 lectures of about an hour each. And it's a seminar on the Chaitanya Charitamrita. So it's like
Mm.
very, very, very interesting.
Yeah, that's great. Thank you.
Welcome. And so, yeah, so in this text 3:10, chapter 10, text 3, to know Krishna, you love him. And part of little aspects of him, knowing him, is that you realize that he's unborn, he's beginningless, he's the supreme Lord of all the worlds, and that he only, undiluted among men that understands this, right, is free from sin, because now you're just acting for Krishna's pleasures because you love him, and then you're free from sin. You're not going to fall even into the traps of these subtle actions in the material world, which would ultimately be to satisfy yourself, sense for your own sense gratification. You're completely free from that. You're free from all sins because you know him and you love him deeply.
Mm. I
Uh,
love that.
shall we move on to form 5? Would you read that,
Yes.
please?
Intelligence, knowledge, freedom from doubt and delusion, forgiveness, truthfulness, control of the senses, control of the mind, happiness and distress, birth, death, fear, fearlessness, nonviolence, equanimity, satisfaction, austerity, charity, fame, and infamy. All these various qualities of living beings are created by me alone.
Yes, we've been discussing how Krishna has unlimited qualities. And then the philosophical point here comes that you cannot give what you don't have. And Krishna is saying these qualities of the living beings, which means us, we have them, right? Are created by me, which means he gives us, which means he must have them himself. And these are some of the qualities that even we have. So then he must have, but he must have them in perfection and many, many more. And when I read this list, the experience I have is like, man, I wish I had a fraction of one of them. Like knowing that I don't have uh, in full any of them, right? If you talk about intelligence, what do we know? Like, what is our intelligence? Like, I really like this point of intelligence and knowledge as it relates to humility, because a very interesting point, right? Is like, how do you become humble? I like one of our dear devotees in our community, Shuri Prabhu. He oftentimes, when he will give lecture, he'll say, if you're humble, whoever is humble, put your hands up. And then raise your hands. And sure enough, some people are caught by surprise, they put their hands up, which is a paradox, because if you're humble, you don't think yourself as such, and you wouldn't put your hands up to begin with, right? So it's like, if you're humble, put your hands up. And then like a lot of people will be like, got their hands up. And so how do you become humble? Like, and I love the realization I got in our by associating with our community, is that, well, you just realize how much you don't know. That there's so much to know, and that there's so much that we don't know, that if you knew that there's no possible effect of that realization other than you becoming humble, realizing like, man, it's much bigger than I thought. There's existence, consciousness, love of God, the universe is a much bigger topic than what we think within our group think. When we get together with others that are lazy by nature and don't like to think about deep topics and just come up with a very simplistic analysis of something that is not understood and say, we understand fully and this is what it is. And then you embrace that group think and you say, I now know this thing in full. No, you don't. Like, we don't know anything of anything. And like, if you look at an atom, it's 99% empty, which means we know 1% of an atom. So what do we know? And if the entire universe is made out of atoms, ultimately speaking, we can say, that means we know that there's 99% of the universe that we don't know. And so what is this intelligence? What is this knowledge we have? It's so limited. But Krishna is now here citing, hey, intelligence and knowledge as a potential. I look at it. I don't look at it as like intelligent. I am an intelligent being and a knowledgeable being. I know I don't know. We don't know. Like, even scientists who say they know, they don't know. They know what, 1% of an atom? So what can you really know with empirical methods of so-called science? We know a tiny bit, enough to manipulate it and cause chaos. We call that an atomic bomb. But we don't really know it in full or how to use it properly. But then we call it empirical science, and it is good. Could be in relationship to medieval barbaric religious wars, and the Renaissance brought that up, but it's not the end all and be all. So what is intelligence? What is knowledge? Like, how is that a quality of mine? I know it's not. I know I don't have it in full. But as I look at this list as a list of potentials that ultimately Krishna has in full, and that I know that by gaining rid of my ignorance, I can have access to these qualities again of true intelligence and knowledge, not relative, but absolute intelligence and knowledge. Freedom from doubts and delusion. Like, I doubt, like, I doubt that we ever going to be able to live without COVID-19. I doubt so many things, but I can get into a state where I am free from doubts and delusion, forgiveness. I mean, we can go on, like we can analyze each one of these in depth and it will be a class of itself. We can spend 1 hour talking about each one of these, talking about forgiveness. How can we talk about that, right? It requires at least an hour. Truthfulness, if we spend a day trying to tell the truth, we probably will fail. Like, try to engage in 100% true speech throughout the course of your whole day with not only every person that you encounter, but with yourself in your inner dialogues, and try to speak the truth. We probably fail in one day. We can't keep that up, you know? And if you think that what I'm saying is an exaggeration, listen to Jordan Peterson's book. There's a chapter dedicated to this point called Tell the Truth, or at least Do Not Lie. That's the title of the chapter. And if you think that telling the truth is easy, listen to the chapter, you see it's not. And so, truthfulness, control of the senses. If everybody could control the senses, all wars could have been avoided. So that's the formula for world peace. Control your senses. Forget about your greed and your anger, and learn how to share, right? And control of the mind. Who can do that? Happiness, to have control over happiness and distress, to think of Monday as you think of Friday, and think of Friday the way, same way you think of Monday. Like, so like you own happiness and distress. Um, Death. How about death? Like, death would ruin somebody's day, right? And everybody they know. And then so then now you're free of the fear of death. Fearlessness as a quality. Non-violence, like you're not thinking of animals as just things that don't feel pain. Like, you don't kill them and you don't eat them because you know that's violent. Like, if you truly understand that point, like that point alone, how many people in the world don't get by continuously slaughtering animals? You know, so you become non-violent. Equanimity. Satisfaction, which is so linked to renunciation that we were just talking about, right? If you're satisfied internally, what are you hankering for externally? Who are you seeing as a different race? Who are you seeing as a different nation that I should bomb? Who are we seeing as different religion, and therefore we should send out some crusades to annihilate them? You know, like, no, you're satisfied inside. Externally, things won't bother you. Austerity, charity, fame, and infamy. Like, we have all these qualities. It's part of who we are. Krishna is saying here, all these qualities of the living beings are created by me. I don't see any one of these qualities fully manifested in many people, in most people I know, but we have them all. And we have them all when we can experience them all in full. And Krishna constantly shows that all of his qualities at once, you know, being expressed in his pastimes and so on. And so this is just giving me a glimpse of our potential, you know, like this chapter, again, to bring it within context, this chapter being about the opulences of the absolute. Well, these are his opulences that we can have it too. And he has all these in full. It's inconceivable. I don't know me or anybody to have any one of these in full. What to speak of having all of them in full. And that's Krishna. And that's the person that we can love. You know, eternally, and with so much variegatedness. It's so dynamic. It's not like static love. He always evolves, you know?
Yeah, that really puts it into perspective when you broke those down of, oh, all these qualities that are so hard for all of us to sustain for even 5 minutes, Krishna has them naturally.
Yeah.
Yeah, and this also brings up an interesting question. And we've talked about the problem of evil in the past, and I was hoping you could talk about it again, just for any new listener or someone who's new to this philosophy of, if all things are created by Krishna, all things come from Krishna, then what about all the negative quality, the quote unquote negative qualities, the question of evil, and how does our philosophy address that?
The first thing to understand is free will, because it is a big piece of the puzzle here in so many directions. Free will is the center of this topic, and we can go left and right, and left takes us to, well, let's just get into it. So Krishna gives us free will. Then you may ask, well, why is that? Well, because without free will, you can have true, pure, expert love. You cannot. You can have a different type of love, but it wouldn't be the ultimate love because you don't have free will. Either knowingly or unknowingly. I was actually having this conversation with my wife the other day. What if you have amnesia and you even forgot about the choices that you once thought you would want to have? And then now you wake up and then all your own experiences that you are in love with this infinite being, and you're not even aware of the fact that you could have a choice. Would you then feel sorry for yourself that you don't have free will? Or would you say like, okay, forget about my free will. I give up. Just keep me here. I don't want my free will because I can misuse it and I will misuse it. So anyways, the highest love would require you to have free will because you must choose that which you love. Otherwise, you are forced one way or another. Even in this extraordinary example that I just brought up, you never had the opportunity to experience something better if it was possible. So why does Krishna gives us free will? Because free will is a necessity for the highest possible love, for the best possible love to manifest. Free will is necessary. So that's one point. Now, because we have free will and we are very minute, which is to say small, we have a tendency to misuse it. We could use our free will to do something that is good. We could use our free will to do something that is bad. To be even more clear and in context to what we are describing here or discussing in this lecture so far, I'm going to take a big step, a step which atheists, scientists would really not like hear me saying. But let's take a really big leap of faith and say that we're going to define what is good and what is bad. And we're going to define so within the theological context of our understanding. Then, in that scenario, good would be actions, would be things that pleases Krishna's senses. That is good because it's your constitutional position. And bad would be something that pleases your own senses. That would be selfish, like we were discussing earlier in this class, to fulfill your own gratification. Well, if you consider that way and you have free will, now is your choice. You can please Krishna's senses or you can please yours. If you please Krishna's senses, it's good. If you please yours, it is bad. Why? Well, because when you please in your own senses, the first thing is it's you against them. My nation versus your nation. What I get and what you lose. In order for me to win, you must lose. And so many opportunities for hate and greed and anger will come out of that. Only because you have the free will to do so. And inevitably, you're going to choose that at one point or another. If you doubt that, think about your existence. Have you ever done anything to please yourself? The answer is yes. And therefore, you misused your free will. And you acted in a selfish way to please your own senses. And the results of which will inevitably be anger. Because in the material existence, you are not going to be satisfied because the only thing that can satisfy you is spiritual love. But if you are hankering after things that are material, you are going to be unhappy because those things are going to have a beginning and an end. And when they end, you get angry. When you get angry, you act confused. And therefore, and that's a big therefore here, and therefore, hell is created by you who misuse your free will and acted in a selfish way. Instead of pleasing Krishna's senses, you want to please your senses. In order to please your own senses, you have to protect yourself and that which you have accumulated, which you're going to be deriving satisfaction from, your material possessions, your intellectual position, You have to protect that. So now somebody else can come and get it. So you got to keep them away. So we form a nation. We will create bombs that will protect us. And if somebody takes it from us, we're going to want justice. We're going to punish them. Then it's just a matter of time before they come after us, seeking their revenge and their justice. And we call that war. And that's hell. And that's evil. And it has nothing to do with God. It has only to do with your own misuse of your own free will. And therefore, hell is created. And the problem of evil is a problem of us not knowing how to act right, not knowing how to do good, which is to serve Krishna. If you're serving Krishna, if everybody's serving Krishna, what is the question of evil? Because everybody's going to be in love with the supreme person, and there's no evil. So the problem of evil is the problem of selfishness, not some defective, perfect being who's supposed to be all good but created evil. No, he didn't. He gave us free will. That's the point. Why? Because it is necessary in order for the highest possible love to exist. And that's what we are interested in. We are interested in the highest possible love. And so is Krishna. Krishna is interested in the highest possible love. And therefore, free will is a necessity, and therefore you can misuse it, and you will misuse it, and that's evil. It has nothing to do with Krishna. Does that answer the question definitively?
Yes, yes, thank you. And it's such an interesting phrase that you said about we create our own hell. I was really thinking about that, what that looks like, oh,
We
yeah.
do. And it is so subtle. We can go back to this subtle ways in which we may act that would do all like who wouldn't defend their nation? That's a noble act. You're going to go and you're going to fight for your nation. You pledge allegiance to your flag. It's an honorable thing. Well, but you're actually killing others in order to defend your own. And that's to the person's perspective whom you're killing and their families. That's hell. Because there's a group of people that they love. And you went in there and shot them. And you don't even know them. You just did that given your own group think of your own nation. And then now you just took their love away and you just created their hell on earth. And then now it's just a matter of time between retaliation goes back and forth, or companies suing one another for their so-called intellectual properties and causing so many havoc and anxiety and stress and sleepless nights that then people need uh, pills, sleeping pills to be able to sleep because they can't sleep at night because they're in anxiety about their intellectual whatever being stolen by the competition and so on. That's hell. That's it's a different forms of hell. And then you get so angry because somebody stole it from you and you stole it from them or their group, the Jews, the one that controls all the money. And in order for us to control the money, you got to get rid of them. That was the Nazi propaganda, So let's make them subhumans so we don't have any problems getting rid of them. Let's defend them and to protect our own pure aerial race. That's hell. And that leads to genocide, that leads to gas chambers. But that's you thinking that way. That's you thinking that way and contaminating somebody else's brain to think that way and embracing that as a national ideology. And that's hell, literally.
Yeah, and also the idea that, okay, why do we have to be punished? Let's say we made a mistake in making this choice or that choice using our free will. And when you break it down into what does the best of all possible worlds look like, it would be that there would be consequences to actions and choices. Otherwise, we really would live in a chaotic world. A lot of times I hear from people that they feel their life is so chaotic. People who don't have any sort of religious foundation or philosophy that answers these types of questions is that they do feel the world is so chaotic. I feel like I'm a good person. Why are these things happening to me? And so the idea that, okay, in a perfect world, if someone did something really bad to you, isn't it appropriate that at some point, maybe not this life, but in another life, that there would be consequences to their choices. That's the only way we would avoid a chaotic world.
Absolutely. And you can see also how it is the best possible world, because it not only it gives you the opportunity to learn from your mistakes, which is the point you just made, right? But also it gives you the opportunity to act right and fall in love with the supreme person. You also have the free will to choose that, and so it is the best possible scenario, and it is just on us to miss it, to use it properly. Krishna says he's in our heart, and um, what does that mean, right? Like, why is it there? Like, it's just a witness to keep track of what we do bad, but also keep track of what we do good, but also to guide us, because he's our dear friend. In the capacity of a friend, I have the desire to help them. Then why wouldn't Krishna, if he is the greatest friend, he would want to have, he most definitely would therefore have the desire to help me and guide me. And we all know it's so metaphysical that it's almost cliche to say this, so neo Hindu to say this, like a movie that may watch on Netflix, but it's also true. So we can't escape it. If you listen carefully in your heart or in your mind, there's a voice there. There's always two voices in your own mind. If you haven't noticed, you haven't paid attention enough yet. They are there. There's one part of you that is instigating you to do what you know to be wrong. And there's another voice inside of you that is counseling you to do what you know is right. And those two voices are there. And if you know, again, you just haven't paid attention because you're so dominated by anger and greed or lust that you couldn't hear, but they were there nevertheless. And so Krishna, in our hearts, he's telling us what is the right thing to do. Those two voices are there. They are in everybody's head. Again, it sounds so cliche, it's so metaphysical, but it's also true. Just pay attention. You can do that mental exercise. Do it for a week. You hear there are decisions that you have to make. Little things that are ethical or unethical, but doesn't have a big consequence. And should I do this? No, actually I should, but if I don't do it, it's not that big of a deal. Oh, don't do it. Just be lazy. No, you should do it. Go ahead and suck it up. Yeah, nah, do it next time. Like, it's constantly going on in your mind, and so Krishna is there guiding us to do good. We just have to listen careful, and we won't misuse our free will. But when we are living in autopilot, not paying attention to the contents of our mind or the way he acts, we associate with others that are of such mindset. And the tendencies in our day and age is to have instant gratification, go for what's right now, which oftentimes are the right thing to do, are not the right thing to do. And so we are less than attentive to what is right and wrong. And our mind is in autopilot, and we are constantly misusing our free will and constantly creating hell for ourselves. Part of becoming a yogi and calming the mind and controlling the mind is being able to hear Krishna has always been there, telling us what's right. And then the more we continue to act in that way, we acting right, taking ourselves out of this hellish condition, which is also perfect. Krishna allows us to fulfill our desires whatever way we want.
Yeah. I also liked your point of the ultimate level of love, the perfection of love, because it's pretty easy to go down the path of, okay, if we didn't have free will and we were Stepford wives and just loved Krishna from this programmed state, it wouldn't be that fulfilling. But in our society, it's really disturbing to me how there's a trend for non-human forms of romantic intimacy for people, whether it's a computer program. There was that movie a bunch of years ago called Her, about this guy who had a romantic partner who was a computer. And then these stories you see these days of people seeking non-human forms of romantic partners. And it's disturbing to me because, yes, there are people who would say that, no, I kind of would like a Stepford wife type of situation, like someone who's programmed to love me no matter what. And while I can understand why they could get to that point, it's not the highest level of love. So
Wow, I'm bewildered by hearing you saying that. I wasn't aware of this. So there are people like that? Like there's a trend,
yeah,
you call it a
yes,
trend. There's a trend of
yeah.
this
All
behavior
this,
right now?
all this, especially with the virtual reality growth, the idea of having computerized partners, having um, even I don't want to disturb anybody's mind and be triggering, but non-human physical partners,
Yes.
um, but just the virtual reality world really taking off, and how people are just getting so wrapped up into this computer simulated world and getting pulled away
Wow.
from reality. So
That is so sad. I
it
wasn't aware
is,
of this.
yeah.
And yeah, that's the exact point you're making. So how how can anyone dare to say, to argue that such a love with a programmed robot would be equals to the love that you could experience from a human being who possesses free will and chooses to love you? You know, it's self-evident. It's obvious. There's a difference there. And so the more of free will you have, the more knowledge you have of everything, and the more you keep on choosing Krishna, then the higher that love is. And so, yeah, um, Krishna must give us free will because of this point. It's the best possible love. And with that free will, we can misuse it. So then the evil, the problem of evil is us misusing our free will. And Krishna is just waiting for us to get back acting right.
All right, so we're towards the end of the episode. We have two more texts. Did you want to read the last two texts?
I think so. Yeah, I think we are towards the end, but I think we can do justice to them
Okay.
in a brief moment. So, text 6, the seven great sages, and before them, the four other great sages and the Munis, progenitors of mankind, come from me, born from my mind, and all the living beings populating the various planets descend from them. So, what is happening here? What is Krishna doing, right? So, he's talking about his opulence, he's telling Arjuna, he's giving Arjuna knowledge which is better than what he already spoken. And then now he's promoting this knowledge. He said, hey, even the demigods are now aware of this, right? And even the seven sages and the other four sages before them and the progenitors of mankind. So these are highly intellectual, spiritual sages of the universe, right? Progenitors of mankind from whom all the human race descends in the entire universe, not only in this planet. So this is like a very far out, let's say, knowledge that Krishna is about to lay on Arjuna. So I think this verse is continuing with that trend of this, the very beginning of this chapter. Krishna is highlighting the power of what he's telling Krishna, Arjuna, right? And then the last text that we're covering today, text 7, it reads, one who is factually convinced of this opulence and mystic power of mind engages in unalloyed devotional service. Of this, there is no doubt. That takes me right back to the point I was making with the text 3, that to know Krishna is to love him, right? Krishna is here is essentially saying that one who is factually convinced of this opulence and mystic power of mind, which means you really truly understand and know Krishna. You're convinced of Krishna existing, that he has this opulence and mystic power, and that it is his, right? First of all, he exists, that all this opulence and mystic powers that he describes is his. And what would happen to you? You're going to engage in unalloyed devotional service. So to know him is to love him. And Krishna says, and of this, there's no doubt. There's no doubt that you're going to be renounced from the lower desires because you have tasted this higher desire. I mean, this higher experience, which is me, Krishna himself. You know, what are your thoughts?
Yeah, I really like how it just speaks to the power of knowledge, just learning more. When I first started coming to the temple, Devamrita Swami gave a really good lecture on chanting, our form of meditation. And he was talking about how when you're just starting out, it's fine to just chant with your intelligence. The sound vibration, it's pure sound, and it'll carry you forward in your advancement. And so to be able to learn about Krishna with your knowledge, with the intelligent left brain side of you, at some point you're going to be convinced, and then the natural result of that is being devoted and worshiping Krishna. I really like that approach. Like, hey, just keep seeking knowledge and it's going to kick in. So
Very interesting point. That is it possible to act in a way that creates love, or you must have love in order to act in that way, right?
mm-hmm.
And what you were saying is, I think, if I understood correctly, highlights the power of our process, that even if you don't already have love for Krishna, by chanting purifies you, and it is you chanting your beloved's name. So you are engaging in that loving action, that by doing that you develop love, right? Not necessarily that you must have love already so that you can do that, but no, you can do that and then you develop love. Is that more or less the point you were making, Kim?
Yes.
Okay, awesome.
Yeah, very reassuring to me.
We're on the same page.
All right. Well, thank you. It was such a good episode. We went a little bit long, but we had 2 weeks to cover. So I'm going to post the lectures, and I really encourage everyone to, let's see, today's the 11th, so the 10th. The lecture on the 3rd is the lecture that Tukaram Prabhu gave with his friend. It was such a good lecture, and I really encourage everyone to watch that. It was really moving and beautiful. So
Yes, I highly recommend as well.
yeah, and hopefully we can potentially get the lecture from your guru online.
Absolutely,
as well.
I will send it to you. I'll figure it out. We can talk offline, and I'm sure between the two of us IT heads, we can figure out how to get this file from my phone to your phone.
Okay, perfect. All right, well, thank you, Tadeu, and I really appreciate your time, and thank you everyone who's listening, and we'll see you next week. Haribol.